Hello, Slew. Hi, how are you? We are doing another college visit post Thanksgiving. Today we have here with us Ian Dooley, who is an admission counselor at Kenyon College, which, spoiler alert, is my alma mater. If you come in my office, you will see my diploma hanging there, written in Latin. Yes, that is how they do it at Kenyon. So, Ian, welcome.
Thank you, Kate, and I'm certainly glad to be able to visit St. Louis University High School, although in a virtual sense. This is my second year as an admissions counselor at Kenyon, as Kate mentioned, and certainly I'm an incredibly proud member of the Kenyon community. I certainly wish I had found myself in St. Louis this year, but something to look forward to in the next. And I will be your point of contact. I am the representative for the entirety of Missouri and certainly St. Louis. So please feel free to reach out to me at any point should you have any questions, that aren't addressed in this short little video. I would love to help you in any way possible, and they don't have to be questions specific to Kenyon. They can be just general college admissions questions. That's part of my job here at Kenyon. As much as I like to believe that Kenyon is the place for everyone, I know that that's a little naive in my thinking. So as long as I can make this as an informative experience as possible, particularly during this year, although in any other year it's a kind of an angst-inducing experience. But that's a wonderful part of life. Getting able to make a large decision for the first time in many of your lives. Where you're going to be spending the next 4 years of your life, not only to live but also to be and to learn and to contribute.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. That's a wonderful offer, and I hope people will take you up on it, Ian. That's incredibly welcoming. I really appreciate that. Um, so Kenyon College, if okay, let's pretend we're doing a regular college visit. like we're really on campus and you're in one of the rooms in the senior hallway. This is how we used to do it, people. uh, so people would actually come in the building and go to a classroom in the senior hallway, and we would take multiple visitors. We'd have up to 7 or 8 at a time during activity period, and a little sign would be hanging outside of your room that would say Kenyon College, room 127. And somebody, a junior, a high achieving junior, walks by and says, "Oh, I've heard of that. I think I maybe have heard of the Kenyon Review or something. I'm going to go in and check it out." So if that's as much information as they have, and they're interested in small liberal arts colleges, where do you go from there with them, Ian?
Well, I think that, first and foremost, those are a lot of really great things about Kenyon, particularly when we talk about the Kenyon Review. So the Kenyon Review, for those that aren't aware, is one of the nation's foremost literary publications. And the college receives submissions all throughout the world, and our students serve as associates on the review in any given year. And they serve as first-term readers for these submissions.
Mm.
Many students have gone on to work in publishing or similarly in journalism and really other incredibly lucrative and very impressive careers in their own right. But in talking about Kenyon is so much more than just the Kenyon Review and being located in Gambier. Kenyon is a place with an incredibly rich tradition and history. So Kenyon is in fact the oldest private college in the state of Ohio. We were founded in 1824. In all of that time, we really have been a pioneer in higher education. So for example, Kenyon is home to the first college bookstore in the entire country and the longest continuously running college bookstore in the entire country. Modern day faculty student advising began at Kenyon in 1841. So a rich tradition there. For those students that are maybe, they like the AP program, maybe they kind of, avoid the AP program, maybe they had mixed feelings about APs, that's fine and dandy, but I always like to tell students that the AP program actually had its start at Kenyon in the 1950s. And those are just a few examples of a few examples of some of Kenyon's pioneering ways about approaching education and similarly contributing to education across the country. And talking about the physical place, Kenyon is an incredibly dynamic place. We're located, like I mentioned, in Gambier, Ohio. So we're about an hour northeast of Columbus to give you a general geographical idea of where we're located. And we're home to 1,700 students from all 50 states and 46 different countries. So I like to say that Kenyon is as much an international campus as it is a domestic campus. Something that, is something we take great pride in. Kenyon is kind of a melting pot of different ideas and certainly different lived experiences. When I'm asked to describe a typical Kenyan student, I would describe them as unapologetically themselves. You know, we're the nerds, we're the musicians, we're the, you know, everything in between, and we embrace that. You know, this is a community that embraces difference and certainly diversity in thought. You know, that's something that you know, you'll hear continuously, whether, you know, Mrs. Kinballum talks about you know, Kenyan, or I talk about Kenyan, or anyone that knows anything about a Kenyan, you often hear the word community. It is an incredibly tight-knit community. You know, this is a place that you know, during your course of your 4 years, not only will you receive an exceedingly you know, tremendous undergraduate education, but also develop really meaningful relationships along the way. You know, while traversing Middle Path, I wish that you could visit our beautiful campus. Middle Path is kind of the central artery of Kenyon's campus. It's about 3/5 of a mile long, and it connects everything. Many of our buildings are kind of Gothic Revival architecture and design, and ultra modern architecture. And Kenyon is constantly lauded as one of the most beautiful college campuses in the entire country. So Kenyon has a lot going for it. Similarly, I think of the resources. You know, Kenyon is very well situated relative to many of our peers. We're not located in the middle of nowhere, truly like some of our peers. I think that's a good thing to say. But also we have resources that many of our urban peers wouldn't have. For example, we have a 500-acre biological reserve at Kenyon. That's something that students are out conducting research in. They're hiking, they're getting, you know, out of class. You know, this just a few examples of that, and also our observatory, and a number of different opportunities that simply our location really benefits and situates Kenyan students well for getting the most of their undergraduate experience. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. I always like to tell students that, you know, Kenyon is known as the Writers College. And that's not to say that you should only be interested in English and creative writing to be interested or even wanting to apply to Kenyon. Certainly that's a great reason. But, you know, at Kenyon, we believe with good writing comes good thinking. And with that mindset, you know, writing it will encompass everything that you do at Kenyon, whether you're an English major, whether you're a physics major, a mathematics major, you'll be doing a lot of writing. And it's certainly writing that's well-intentioned. It's not writing just for the sake of writing. You'll be well situated to be a well-written individual with any discipline that you encounter at Kenyon. So that's certainly something we take great pride in as well.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, all those things are so true. And I had no idea about the academic advising. That
Yes, yes.
is such a neat thing. Oh my goodness. I still remember my very first academic advising meeting. We were sitting on the lawn of the Church of the Holy Spirit with Professor Bill Klein and my upper class counselor, and we had this plate of brownies from the food service, and we're just like, that was my very first little group of people that I got to know. It was so cool. So there are a lot of small liberal arts colleges, and I think you have done an awesome job of making Kenyon distinctive for sure as a writer's college. What are some of the other really popular majors these days?
So some of our most popular majors are in STEM-related fields. I think particularly biology, biochemistry, and as well as chemistry in general, and certainly psychology. I always like to bring up psychology in that, you know, Kenyon is very forward-thinking. We're not monolithic in how we approach things. And so in many institutions throughout the country, psychology is coupled with the social sciences. And as a psychology major myself, I certainly am proud to see that Kenyon actually couples psychology with the natural sciences, which I think is where it rightfully belongs. So those are some of our most popular majors on Kenyon's campus. Oftentimes students have a question, well, I'm really interested in STEM-related fields. Why should I attend a liberal arts institution? Why not a large research institution or something to that effect? And I always tell students, you know, particularly at Kenyon, first and foremost, small class sizes. So we have a 10-to-1 student to faculty ratio, certainly on the lower side of things. You know, at Kenyon, there are no lecture auditoriums. You're not going to be sitting in an auditorium with a balcony and there's 500 plus students in an organic chemistry course. That's simply just not how Kenyon does things. And so that's something to consider. You know, organic chemistry, I took that class. I took biochemistry. I took a lot of other courses in my time as an undergraduate. And those are classes that you want to have individualized attention and certainly courses that you're going to be able to talk to the professor. Again, Kenyon doesn't have TAs. That's also something I want to bring up. You know, these are things that are hallmarks of a Kenyon education. And similarly, when I talk about, you know, Kenyon, particularly related to those other majors, particularly in STEM-related fields, you know, Kenyon undergraduates are able to conduct research all 4 years. At many other institutions, particularly research institutions, students are having to fight tooth and nail to even get very limited research experience. Where at Kenyon, research happens in the classroom, but it certainly happens outside the classroom independently. And that's something that we want all students to be afforded the opportunity to be engaged in. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And also the resources. Many students at Kenyon are conducting or engaging in laboratory techniques or laboratory experiments that most students wouldn't be able to participate in until they were graduate students. So very well equipped to pursue the sciences at Kenyon. Actually, our physics department is endowed by the National Sciences Foundation. So we do a lot of really impressive things at Kenyon across the board. And similar next, again, with related to English or the sciences, I like to say Kenyon, we like to do everything remarkably well. We don't ignore certain academic disciplines. We like to take things, all into consideration and really strive for our best across academic disciplines. So I always like to mention that to students. At Kenyon, our most popular major coming in is undecided, and that can be said about a lot of institutions. But when you have an institution that takes all areas of academics as seriously as possible, that really lends itself well to being flexible. Maybe you come in having an idea of what you're wanting to major in, but maybe you take a neuroscience class of Dr. McFarlane, and you're like, I want to be a neuroscience major. And so you'll be well situated to make that transition, or similarly double major. I always like to point that out as well at Kenyon.
Says the person who declared a double major the last possible day of the end of her sophomore year. Yes.
and that's not uncommon. We encourage that, although much to maybe my colleagues in the registrar's office, much to their angst, maybe don't encourage that. But again, that happens quite often.
Yeah.
And seemingly, maybe, Kenyon is, of course, being a liberal arts institution. We not only encourage students to explore across academic areas, but they're required to explore across academic areas. And so oftentimes, with that interdisciplinary nature about Kenyon, students find themselves seemingly double majoring or picking up two minors or a concentration just by chance. It's very unintentional, but it's intentional in that regard, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
One question that I want to ask, and I think you'll have some good things to say. What are some of the fun traditions at Kenyon?
So this is one of my favorite questions when I'm asked about questions related to Kenyon. Kenyon, as I mentioned, is an exceedingly traditional institution. But I would have to say by far my favorite campus tradition is students, when they matriculate to campus, they end up signing the Book of Matriculation. And so that is a living document, and that all Kenyon alums have signed the Book of Matriculation. Everyone from Rutherford B. Hayes to John Green to Allison Janey to Paul Newman. Hopefully students know who those individuals are. If you don't, I would encourage you to check them out. I'm finding increasingly, although I am a movie buff, many people may not be as familiar with Paul Newman as what I think that they should be.
Right.
For those of you that may not know, Paul Newman was an incredible actor in his own right, a Kenyon alum, and certainly an incredibly loyal Kenyon alum, just across the board. But that's a really neat Kenyon tradition. And actually, when we talk about peers, so we have one dining hall on Kenyon's campus. It's kind of the unofficial student union. And so when students are traversing down Middle Path to go to grab a bite to eat, or they're wanting to grab a cup of coffee or meet friends at Pierce, at the main entrance, past the main doors, there's the Kenyon seal. And everyone avoids that like the plague, in the sense that, for those students that are superstitious, it's that if you step on the seal, you won't graduate in 4 years. Although I graduated, I am not about ready to find out. It has a lot of negative connotations to it. And it's fascinating to see students, avoid that, whether they're reading a book, they're engaging in conversations with their friends, they could be texting, they could be reading the New York Times for all I know, but they all seemingly avoid it. And that's a really another interesting Kenyon tradition. But also I'm talking about, the first year sing. That's all the students gathered together in front of Ross Hall. As they matriculated, they sing Kenyon-related songs in front of the entire Kenyon community. It's not as anxiety-inducing as it may seem, And then when students, after students have finished their final papers and research and all of that during their senior year, they kind of go out the way in which they came, and they return to the steps of Ross Hall, and they engage in the first year, I guess, kind of a senior sing at that point as well. So a lot of really interesting Kenyan traditions, certainly many more that I would encourage you to check out under our website. I think we have a lot listed there,
Yeah.
but definitely a really interesting place in that regard.
That senior sing always goes a lot better than the freshman one. It's like, "Ooh, I don't know these songs." Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, my final question that I would like to ask is, coming all the way from St. Louis, and believe it or not, I had this as part of my territory when I was on the admissions side at Kenyon College as well. What would bring a student all the way from St. Louis to little old Kenyon College?
I think there's a lot of things, but I think first and foremost, it's that incredible sense of community. Kenyon is truly a very, very unique place. We have students, and not just students, but similarly faculty and staff from all different walks of life. And they make that very intentional decision to be in a community that values education first and foremost, certainly athletics. Kenyon, out of all NCAA division institutions, regardless of division, Kenyon holds the second most championships. So I like to say that we take things as seriously, both in the classroom and certainly on the field as well.
Mhm.
And a lot that can be said about our swimming program for those students interested in swimming. But then talking about the incredible beauty, Kenyon is an incredibly gorgeous place.
Mm,
And on top of top-notch academics and similar access to resources, Kenyon, I think does a remarkable job. Something that students should be very concerned about is not only during their time in college as an undergraduate and similarly thereafter, but also in looking about how a school prepares you for life in general. I think Kenyon's a very real-world education. I think there's a lot of value behind that, but also in talking about that, Kenyon, again, relationships run deep.
mm,
And it's not like a lot of institutions where you graduate, they kind of cut the cord, as it were, and hope that maybe in 5, 10 years down the road, you come back for, alumni weekend, maybe give some money or something like that. And that's the extent of it. That's not the case at Kenyon. Aside from having all those wonderful, relationships and alums keeping together and faculty keeping together with students, certainly alums give to the college, and that's great. But preparing you for entering the workforce, similarly preparing you for graduate school or professional school. I always like to point that out. 97% of Kenyan students that apply to graduate school are accepted in one of their top 3 choices.
wow,
96% of Kenyan students that apply to law school are accepted in one of their top 3 choices.
wow,
And 94% of Kenyan students that apply to medical school are accepted into one of their top 3 choices.
wow.
And these are very prestigious programs in their own right. These programs know the types of students that Kenyon produces, and similarly the types of students that Kenyon attracts.
Mhm.
But also in looking at that, I always think of the Allstate commercial, "You're in good hands."
Yeah.
It sounds kind of corny, but Kenyon really
No,
takes
it's
care of our own. This is a community that's vested to the success of our community members, and similarly, it's a community that's vested to your success and your personal growth, and one that really wants to maintain those relationships over a lifetime.
mhm. Oh, I would so agree with that. Those are such great points. I firmly believe in that as well. Um, it's a place where when you get on campus, you just know that it's home, right?
I think that I tell a lot of students, and certainly, this can be said for other institutions as well. But your guiding, your intuition is guiding you this far in life. It stands to reason you're looking at Kenyon, you've done, well in school. But similarly, when you go visit a college campus, and I know that has changed as of right now, and I wish that weren't the case.
Yeah.
But when you are able to visit a college campus,
Mhm.
or is similarly able to get a feel for the institution, and you have kind of, I can't explain it, the feeling, like Kate said.
Yeah.
That's a strong indicator that's maybe a good place for you, and
Mhm.
you should run with it,
Yeah.
and trust your intuition and your gut.
Yeah. I came from New York State myself and could have gone to Hamilton, could have gone to Colgate, and there's a lot of small liberal arts colleges right there in New York State too. But when I got to Kenyon, it was just like, "Oop, this is it." And then when I made my decision in May, my dad heaved this huge sigh of relief and he was like, I knew that in October, but I couldn't say anything because I know you would hate it if I loved it. 17-year-olds. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ian. I really
Of
appreciate
course.
it. This was amazing. And I will actually give out your email information, if you don't mind,
Great.
into the junior
Mhm.
class so that they
Yeah.
know that they can contact you.
Mhm. And I also like to say, if you go to Google, you type in visit Kenyon. We have a whole list of virtual opportunities. Virtual information sessions, interviews, and things like that. It's never too early to start, and
No,
certainly never too late to engage in those opportunities.
yes.
And certainly, I would encourage our juniors, as particularly our seniors as well, to take advantage of those. And similarly, there's a lot of updates they're put on there, and certainly to be put on Kenyon's radar. I encourage you to do that. We're very judicial and certainly conscientious when in sending out emails. We don't want to bombard you,
Oh,
and we do a remarkable job of that. But really, I love to tell students, take advantage of this time. We've all been afforded a gift, and that we can be very introspective and really find out what we're wanting in life and what we're wanting in through our educational pursuits, and similarly through a number of different areas. And make the most of this opportunity. I know that there's a lot of other things that aren't panning out as the ways in which we all probably would have hoped or envisioned them panning out.
yeah,
But making the most of these opportunities, I think that there's a lot to be said for that, and I think that there's a lot of good that can come from this.
yeah.
So I wish you all the best of luck, and as Kate mentioned, she'll provide my contact information. And don't be a stranger. I love to help out in any way that I can. And certainly no question is not worth asking or anything like that. So definitely maintain, an open line of communication. So
Thank you so much.